Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the greatest recordings ever. And this is really one of them. No, I'm seriously. They're all one of the greatest recordings ever in this series. Absolutely fabulous things that would grace any collection. And this one is one of my personal favorites. It was such a discovery. It's the Brahms Serenade number 1. With Bernard Haitink and the Amsterdam Concertgebouw Orchestra, now the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra of Amsterdam. But in those days, it was just the Amsterdam Concertgebouw Orchestra. And wow, what a glorious performance this is. Let me see when this was recorded. 1973, it looks like. Serenade number 1. No, 1977. This is coupled actually with the Second Symphony. This is in the big Haitink box, but we have the original cover here. So I thought we would use this one because it's also in the smaller Haitink Does Brahms box. Fact of the matter is, Haitink's Brahms symphonies, while very, very handsomely played and warmly upholstered and all of that stuff, are a little bit on the dull side. Just a tad staid, and, particularly compared to the previous great Brahms cycle by his predecessor, Edward von Beinum. So, I didn't have a lot of hope, let's put it that way, for the Serenades. Now, I have to also make a confession. For much of my callow youth, I was not a huge fan of the Brahms symphonies. I found them rather stiff and coloristically limited, and it wasn't that they weren't great. I mean, I knew that. The Brahms First was one of my mother's very favorite symphonies, and she used to play it all the time when she was, doing other things, reading or housework or whatnot. And she took me to see it live with the Israel Philharmonic. I remember at Woolsey Hall in New Haven with Zubin Mehta conducting. It was a very exciting concert, actually, in the middle of which some idiot who was sitting there got up and started clapping in the middle of the symphony for no reason, not like at a logical spot. And everybody started laughing. The orchestra started laughing, and Mehta turned around and glared at him. And it was just a fun evening for all. It really was. So, I had good experiences with the work, and I liked it. But it didn't really thrill me. And imagine my surprise to find out, and I'm sure this is true of a lot of people, that Brahms wrote 2 big orchestral serenades. Now, the second is for a smallish orchestra with no violins, actually. It's really an interesting work. And in these serenades, he really learned how to orchestrate, and particularly how to use woodwind instruments. And it's the woodwind instruments that kind of feature. And it's very, very interesting because when Brahms came to write symphonies, I learned from hearing these serenades that he had a very particular symphonic style. And that symphonic style was manifested in many, many different ways, which we could talk about, when we talk about Brahms symphonies. And I have talked about that, actually, in my book on the Brahms symphonies, too. I talk about it. One of the interesting qualities of that style is the almost invariable rule that all of the instruments in any movement must participate in the final chord in that movement. Everything had to be necessary. Well, the serenades are much more relaxed. He's not quite so anal, let's put it that way, about how he uses instruments and how integrated it all has to be. He can let some of them sort of let it all hang out. He doesn't use trombones in the first serenade, but it's still for large orchestra in the classical sense because it uses trumpets and timpani. Back in those days, a big orchestra was one that had those instruments and those extra instruments. So I was blown away by the first serenade because it's a big work. It's in 6 movements, right? If I'm not mistaken. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It has a huge 15-minute long adagio. It's longer than anything in the symphonies. It's got 2 scherzos, or 3 scherzos, 2 scherzos and a minuet, and then a really fun finale. Da-dum, ba-dum, 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 ba-da, da-dum, ba-da, 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 ba-da. It's very rhythmic. It can fall apart. It can be excruciatingly dull in the hands of a conductor who doesn't really love it. I mean, and really show that they love it. But Haitink, the interesting thing about Haitink is that even if his symphony performances were just a little bit on the fusty side, he always seemed to marshal his energies to fight for the underdog, for works that other people didn't really care about or didn't get a lot of love. And one of them was like the Shostakovich 12th Symphony. Nobody liked Shostakovich's 12th Symphony. Shostakovich didn't like his own 12th Symphony, and Haitink delivered the greatest performance of it you've ever heard in your life. Well, this is similar. First of all, he's got in the Concertgebouw an orchestra that has one of the all-time great woodwind sections. That is generally acknowledged. I mean, it was a Dutch specialty. Remember the Netherlands Wind Ensemble? And so they really know what they're doing, and they play the daylights out of it. They all have so much character. The very opening, you've got this horn solo and then the clarinet. It's just wonderful, full of personality, and the tempos are just perfect, and the sound is just so warm, and the trumpets gleam. They actually get the tune at one point. The first big climax in the first movement, which is something Brahms almost never would do in the symphonies. So it's really just an amazing discovery for people who love Brahms, even after you've decided that you love the symphonies, as I have. I mean, I've figured them out finally. But wow, what a gorgeous, gorgeous, perfect recording this is. Everything that Phillips did right in recording this orchestra in the Concertgebouw is evident here. And Haitink's on top of his game, and it's just one of the greatest recordings ever. Hands down, easily, without question. So give it a shot if you haven't. You're going to be dazzled, I guarantee it. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me, and take care.